Hi, and welcome to And If Love Remains. I'm your host, Mike Levitt. You're going to be listening to part 2 of our discussion, Dr. Elias Pettersson and I, of modern pianists and what's going on in the piano world today. So, welcome back to Elias, and let's continue the conversation. Yeah, so you're talking about, Alicia Keys and Billy Joel, being able to play, but maybe only up to a certain level. Mm-hmm. I'm reminded, I wish I could remember the name of Billy Joel wrote, a piece of art music, concert music.
And recall that.
And he called it something kind of humorous and funny. But I remember him doing an interview about it, and somebody asked, well, so, are you going to perform? And he said, I can't play this. So he had, and I remember he had, and I can't remember his name now, but he's it's a comedy piano violin
Egudsman and Chu, was it?
Yeah, he used Chu as the pianist for his work.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah, I mean he's a phenomenal pianist.
Yeah,
that's funny that he would write a piece and everybody knows him as like the pianist, and he wrote The Piano Man,
Right.
And yet he can't play the piece he wrote. So, yeah.
I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, that is cute. That's a cute anecdote. But yeah, I think the general population kind of knows that level. And then if you ask musicians that are non-pianists, who do you know? They probably don't know a lot of pianists either, or who to follow. They might know like a Horowitz or something because they've got a CD from their childhood.
Or Lang Lang. It's probably today the most popular.
Yeah. So today, and actually, I always said it like that too. Because I'm only a couple of years older than him, so I remember when he really made it big, and when he was still young. And in the States, we say Lang Lang, and then of course people didn't like him and they made fun of his playing because he was so, like, I guess, electrifying but loud. So they'd say bang bang, and actually it's long long. Yeah. And so but he became so big, huge. I mean, he might have the biggest following in a way of superstardom. He was sponsored by Nike. He was, think of a classical pianist being sponsored by a shoe company,
which is fantastic.
It's amazing. And, for all his, I've actually come around with somebody like that a lot. I respect him in many ways for what he's done for music and for piano. So many kids in China have been just influenced and, given that push and like, oh, I want to be like that. They've been inspired to be like Long Long.
Yeah.
And I think in China right now, they're like 50 or 60 million kids playing piano, which is incredible. That's like, a fifth of the entire population of the U.S.
Right.
Kids
That's
playing piano.
Incredible.
It's, it may be more than that now. So yeah, he's been an incredible influence, and he's a big name, and everybody knows that. So that's not one of the names that I was going to bring up, but just as a reference, he's a reference name. So, talking about some of the old guard, you have people that are still like Martha Argerich, who maybe people know. She has an incredible following, and in the piano world, she's sort of a goddess. She's one of the greatest, I think, in my mind, that's ever lived. Very natural talent and incredible worker, but just has played everything. And she just turned 80, and she actually just released a recital on YouTube, which is, I encourage everybody to watch it. An incredible pianist. So she's up there, and you have the, Ashkenazy, who doesn't really perform anymore, and João Pires, who's phenomenal. Zimerman, Sokolov, András Schiff, these are all Yefim Bronfman. These are all big names that people know. But I was hoping to draw people's attention to the likes of Dong Tai-sun, who's we spoke about, who won the 1980 Chopin, and whose career has really shot through the roof the last.
And what makes Dong Tai-sun special in your mind? Like, why you know, obviously there's certain things that all of these pianists are going to have in common. You know, they're going to be able to play the pieces. They're going to be able, you know what I mean? But what are the things that you go, oh, you know what, that makes this guy special?
Well, so one of the reasons, one of the ways, of course, I'm bringing up these names, I often have a personal connection to them, and so I might be biased. But I believe with somebody like him, you know, he taught at my former university, and I've seen him live many times and spoken with him a lot. And he's such, first of all, as a human being, he's so down to earth and so kind. And when people say that your music making reflects who you are as a person, I really believe that. And I think if you listen to his music, it's so humane, and it's such a representation of his kindness, his generosity of spirit. And so when I listen to him play, I mean, it's phenomenal control of everything. He can do certain things in pieces that I've even felt I've gotten to a high level, and he plays it, and it's just like, wow, I just never thought that you could do that, you know, and or bring that voice out, or accentuate it in such a way, or control it in such a way, or a lot of things that impress me are not maybe what impresses the general public, who love, you know, big bombastic stuff. I'm very impressed with somebody who can play very softly but very controlled, and you still hear everything, and they can bring your ear in and you know, home in on something. That's very impressive to me. If an artist has that fine control, and he does, and it's so colorful and just very colorful playing. That's the best way I can think of it. It's like watching water just flow when he plays. I never feel. I always feel at ease. I never feel discomfort, or like even something that gets me excited in his playing. You know, it's excitement for the right way. I'm never worried or nervous that something's not going to go the way it shouldn't. And he really paints a picture.
That is an incredible, you know, to put somebody at ease, and so you can just appreciate the art for what he's doing. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think he's one of these pianists that helps this new wave of like caressing the piano, almost not treating it as a piano. And I think that wave kind of started with some artists like him in the 80s. And there's another artist that I would say, who's also one of my teachers, Sergei Babayan, who's now considered, you know, one of the big names of today. He's just grown so much, not just in his name recognition as an artist himself, but also through his students. He just signed a contract with Deutsche Grammophon recently, and he's performed with Martha Argerich, and he's performing all over the world. And I just remember lessons with him, and it's just this way of treating the piano as more of a vocal instrument instead of a percussion instrument, which it kind of is, and just caressing the keys and like drawing tone and sound from the piano instead of pushing buttons into the piano. I think words are very powerful and important. And whenever I have students, especially new students, that come to me and they say, well, it's kind of pushing buttons. How do you push hard? And it's like, not really pushing.
Right.
You know, if you're pushing buttons and you're playing piano, you're probably not doing it right.
It's not typing.
It's not typing, you know, and when these artists like Dong Tai-san or Sergei Babayan, they play, there's such a, even in their motions, there's like a caressing that's involved, and that draws the sound out in a different manner. Maybe it's just psychological, you know, but there's a way that they're creating this long line of music, which is so incredible. So
we're gonna hopefully put different clips in the show notes. But if somebody's listening to this, you know, maybe what a highlight piece or two that you would recommend somebody to listen to.
Sure.
To these two guys.
Yeah, well, with Dong Tai-san, I mean, anything from the Chopin competition. I think he has a great recording of the Chopin Second Scherzo on YouTube, and some other things. Babayan doesn't have a ton that's on YouTube, because I know a lot of it's protected under certain copyright laws. But if you just search him, he has some incredible recordings of Rachmaninoff. There was floating around a fourth movement of the Prokofiev Second Concerto, just part of it, maybe not the whole thing, but it was just a video cam from somebody probably holding a phone in their pocket,
right?
Snuck it in. It was really bad quality, but it was incredible playing. And I don't know if it's still up on YouTube. It was few years ago. But yeah, I would just check them out. Anything that they've produced is amazing.
Wonderful.
Some other great kind of pianists from that era. So these are people that are one generation before me. So I'm 40, 41 actually. These pianists are all around that. They're all born in the late 50s, early 60s, and that new wave of pianism, I guess. My teacher, of course, my main teacher for my doctorate. So I consider him one of my main teachers and mentors ever, Paul Stewart. And he's not that well known on the international scene in a way, but in the piano world, and especially in the chamber music world, because he's virtually played everything chamber music with strings and a lot of with voice and with other wind instruments and just huge amount of repertoire. And now he's actually working on the Mettner piano sonatas, releasing those. I think he's released 1 or 2 albums. So he's just such consummate musicianship and beautiful long lines, great tone and sound, and humble playing. I mean, he's that kind of person, and that comes out in his playing, that sort of humility towards the music, and you just sense this nobility when he plays. And I've heard him, a dozen times live, and I have all of his CDs. So it's hard to find him on. I don't even know if you can find him on YouTube, but certainly you can buy his CDs, and they're pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think I'll just mention. So I'll go a little bit forward in time. We've had Frederick Chu on the program.
Yes.
And I think we've already talked about some of his expertise. I think he's one of the great art. He's born in 1964, so he's not too much older than me, but he's 16 years older, and he's just done so many wonderful things in his career.
And that podcast, by the way, was an incredible experience in conversation, and just hearing him, talk about music and then to hear him play, he's a powerhouse. He's great.
Yeah, what I would recommend if anybody has a chance, so many people have recorded the Chopin Etudes ad nauseum, Opus 10 and Opus 25. His recording is one of my favorites, and it's not the one I grew up with. I grew up with, Ashkenazy and Pollini and things, but actually Frederick Chu's is one of my favorite recordings of the Chopin Etudes. And his other stuff his Prokofiev is amazing. So I would highly recommend listening to him. It's just,
and he's like probably is the foremost expert today on Prokofiev.
Well, he's one of them. Yes, he is. He knows so much about it. There are others that might have a similar, like a Boris Berman type, who's recorded a lot. But I think the insight that Frederick Chu has, is second to none. He really understands this stuff, and he has such a command of the keyboard and a very, look at his life. It's so varied. He does computer programming. He does so many different things. And he's like a philosopher. That comes through in his playing, really, when you hear him play. It's wonderful playing. So I'd highly recommend him. Another person, before we get into slightly closer to my generation, but Alexander Korsantia, or Sasha, he teaches at New England Conservatory, and I think one of the foremost musicians and pianists, and also one of the few that today makes transcriptions for the piano. There are very few pianists nowadays that are also composers.
So he kind of in the list mode. So he kind of fell on that list Horowitz kind of model.
Yeah, and so he's come out recently, I think last year. That's one reason I put him on the list, and because he only came into my mind in the last decade or so. I know he's been big for the last 30 years, but I didn't know much about him. But I started listening, and it's so phenomenal, some of the things he played. And he just came out with a version of, oh boy, I can't remember now. Was it Firebird Suite or Petrushka? I can't. One of the ballets by either Defaya or Stravinsky, and I can't remember. But he came up with a solo piano version that included all these extended techniques, and it's just amazing to watch. He has like a drum.
Okay, so Yeah, I was going to
I'll
say,
see if I can
explain
find it.
extended techniques, because some people might don't like, you're making your hand bigger. Like, what does that mean?
Okay, so yeah, so when I say extended technique, I'm talking about something other than what you might do with playing the keys or the pedal. So one type of extended technique which is used a lot is strumming the inside of the piano harp, those strings. So there are some composers like Henry Cowell. He was kind of pioneer of this in the 1930s and 40s, and he would indicate to the pianist, to stand up and strum certain notes. Maybe you'd hold down a chord and you'd strum those notes, and so that chord would ring out and the others would kind of dissipate. It has a very different touch. Another extended technique could be just knocking on different parts of the wood of the piano. The piano is a large percussion instrument and acts as a drum in a way. But depending on where you hit the piano,
or banging the lid down,
or hitting the lid on the back, yeah, there are pieces that have instructions with those kinds of things. So you might hit the edge of the piano, or knock on it with your knuckles or something, not hard necessarily, or maybe you hit the bottom of the fall board or keyboard, or the key bed, and it makes a thud. Those people might say, "Oh, that's not music," but placed correctly, they can be. And when we think of extended techniques, that goes back a long ways. That's not a new thing. Mozart, when he wrote his Rondo alla Turca, which is the third movement of the sonata in A major, it's Kerschel 331. He that's very famous alla Turca.
Yeah.
There's a section in there. Of course, it's influenced by Turkish Janissary music, which has a lot of tambourines and drums in it. So the part that goes dun 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 dun, I don't think I'm singing it in the right key, but that section is with those drums and those tambourines. And on Mozart's forte piano, there was a tambourine stop, which means there was a little tambourine that was connected to the piano, and there was a lever or a button that you would push that would hit the tambourine.
No way.
Jingle. Yeah. So when you play that piece on the piano that Mozart originally composed it on, you can dun dun drum. When you do that little rolled chord, you can. I've never seen this, but I'd love to see the actual piano. You can hit the little tambourine, and
I was going to say, somebody's got to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a video on YouTube. I haven't looked for it. I just remember when I studied that many years ago.
That's great.
Yeah, so that concept of an extension from the piano that's not just playing the notes, that's been around for a long time. It's just that it's been extended even more. There are people like Frederick Chu writing pieces where you tap, different parts of the piano, different parts of your body. You might tap your chest, you might sing, you might whistle. What's the George Crumb piece? He has Macrocosmos. There's a place where you hold a chord, you strum the piano strings inside, and you whistle certain frequencies that ring. It's really powerful if you see it in person. Very hard to perform, but all different types of things like that. So some of the pianists that are great, musicians and trying to compose as well, they incorporate some of that. Marc-André Hamelin is one of those that is in that Lisztian, Horowitzian mold of composing original pieces and also transcribing things or making transcriptions. Arkady Volodos, he's another one. He has some great transcriptions for piano. And even Sergei Babayan, he has a transcription of Romeo and Juliet suite, which was just released on Deutsche Grammophon with Martha Argerich. It's actually for 4 hands, or I don't know if it's 2 pianos. I think it's 2 pianos.
Chu is also,
and Frederick Chu is doing something with ballet dancers and piano.
I think it's Romeo and Juliet.
It's Romeo and Juliet, yes, as well. So there are people out there that are really pushing the boundaries and bringing back that sort of Renaissance musician, because everybody's played Bach preludes and fugues and Beethoven sonatas and Chopin etudes. So let's get something different out there.
Let's do something different.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as awesome as those are, it'd be great to hear something. And I do like your approach, and you've talked about this before, of having some of the old, some of the new, let's get people, I remember the first time I really heard, true modern uh, concert art music. I was in college, and I'm sure I'd heard stuff before, but this was at a formal concert,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an organist played on this phenomenal organ that my college had, and the first thing they did was a Bach, and I thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is going to be so great, and
Yeah.
it was good, but
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I kind of fell asleep. I mean, it was,
I do
and
too
then
sometimes with Bach.
but then he played his own composition on the organ.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that did not put me to sleep. That was so
Yeah.
exciting to hear and so fun. And I was like, okay. And I think people need to experience like a lot, how not just modern composers, but modern artists and how they interpret modern composers.
Mm-hmm.
And, because I think that's a powerful symbiotic relationship that we
Mm-hmm.
need to kind of just like pull the general public into more if we can.
Yeah. And I think people just have this idea of classical music, which really only developed 150 years ago, that this corpus would be, okay, this is the set music you kind of do. And they just, oh, well, that's all got to be boring music. Well,
And it's
have you heard
even less.
Prokofiev?
Yeah, and even less than that, where it's become kind of, and we've talked about this, and I don't blame artists, by the way. I want to make this clear. Like, I don't think it's an artist problem. I think it's a public problem, and that's the idea of the stuffy piano recital, or the stuffy concert, where you show up in a tie and a tux, and you go and you sit on your hands and watch a performance, and at the end, give a great ovation. That's a very, very new concept. You talk about some of, in the 30s, people, talking about the performance in the middle of the performance, and
There'd be more variety shows even back before then too. It wasn't just
right.
piano.
And so it was, and so, the famous, was it the Rite of Spring or Firebird that there was a riot at,
Rite of Spring. Yeah, Rite of Spring.
Yeah,
There was a riot, and that was in the teens or something.
Yeah, 19. So where, that could never happen today, because like it's when you think of a concert going artist or audience, they're looking for Beethoven, they're looking for Mozart. They're not, they're, and that's just, anyway, I'm here to change
and I would
the perception.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I would say that, okay, maybe it's just me. I don't mind going to the concert of Beethoven, if it's also with maybe something new,
Right.
or if it's just a new take on it and it's something interesting. I'll go see the Ninth Symphony. I love it. And is it played well?
Absolutely.
Is it nice? I don't mind. I don't dress up in a tie, to go. I don't think you need to. I also think there's a certain concert etiquette that should be sort of followed, that no, you don't go in flip-flops and t-shirt, because you're going, like, you wouldn't go to church in that either. But there's some sort of respect and mutual understanding you've got to have. And if you're willing to put in a little bit of effort and go and sit through, listen, and try to experience that, you might get something from it that you weren't expecting.
Absolutely.
And if the artist is really engaging, then even more so.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. You're going to say.
Well, I was going to say also, with all of these, people we're talking about, if they come to town, yeah, go buy a ticket and see them we're in Phoenix now. Go see them with the Phoenix Symphony. But even more so, if you know a pianist that's in town, and you want to support them, and they're playing at a local concert hall or a local series, just go, and you might enjoy it more than you think. So I think
Absolutely.
we just need to get those experiences, and I think it's apropos to talk about it now with the pandemic mostly behind us. I hope. I mean, we're still having some issues, but people are really.
It seems like concerts are starting to happen again, and
concerts are starting to happen, and people really miss that connection. And I think art is one of those ways that really brings us close together, and people are realizing, gosh, this really, without this in my life, there's sort of a dearth in my psychology of this. This is just missing, and they're realizing how important it was. So go out and support your local artists, is what I would say.
So to finish up here, who are some of the under 25 artists that we really need to pay attention to? And, who do you see as a great up and coming pianist now?
Yeah, I don't know if I can keep it to the under 25, but we'll see. I will mention a couple that just their names in passing before we get to people younger than me. But Antonio Pompobaldi, who's well known, but he has some amazing recordings, and he just came out with a recital recently, which is phenomenal. Roberto Plano, András Žlavius, whom I love. He actually has a great quote: "There's no better time to do the best work of your life than right now," which
that is good.
I love. I'm sure it's been said in other ways by other people, but I love how he puts that.
Yep.
And then going to somebody that's a little younger than me. So we have Boris Giltberg. So he was born in 1984. And he recently, he has quite a resume. He's won some big competitions, but he just recently came out, or I don't know if he's finished it yet, an essay of the whole 32 Beethoven sonatas. So as we've talked about with Daniel Shapiro, who performed them all this last year, many pianists have recorded all 32 sonatas. It's quite a project. I'll never do it, I know that. But I have to say, Boris Giltberg, his version that he's come out with, and I've listened to maybe 5 or 6 of them. They are so probing and so amazing and just so artistic and beautiful and extremely well recorded. I think they will be one of the new benchmarks and one of the new go-to recordings of those sonatas. So he's really phenomenal. Another person I would really keep my eyes open for, well, I'm going to list quite a few, but Rafał Blechacz, I think I'm saying that right. He's a Polish pianist. Born in 85, he rose to fame by winning the Chopin competition, and I think he's the second, if I remember, the second Polish person to win it, second or third, I can't remember. Anyway, just beautiful playing. You can find him on YouTube all over the place. He has some amazing performances of all Chopin's music for sure. He's So I think Boris Giltberg, with his with the 32 Beethoven sonatas, which everybody's recorded, he just has such probing musicality, and it's incredible what he does with the music. And I think it's going to become a new benchmark for all the Beethoven sonatas. So I would recommend checking those out.
That's high praise.
What's that?
I said that's high praise.
It's incredible. They're all available, and really I use them now. If I have a student playing those, I say, go check this out. The next pianist that I would check out, we're just getting younger and younger now. So Rafał Blechacz, I hope I'm saying that right. He's a Polish pianist, and he won the Chopin competition. And I think he's only the second or maybe the third Polish pianist to actually win it. That's beautiful playing. And if you listen to any of his Chopin performances during the competition or after it, he has some amazing mazurkas that I like, and some waltzes and some preludes. He does the Opus 28, all the preludes, and they're incredible. So he's somebody I'd keep my eyes on. A girl that I really enjoy her playing, Yolum Sun. She got second prize in Tchaikovsky, so I don't think she won any of the big ones, but she's obviously been in a lot of the big competitions and gotten many prizes. Born in 86. And just beautiful long lines, beautiful playing. What I really like, I heard her play a Mozart concerto. I think it was 20 or 21, I can't remember now, which is so often played. It's one of the most famous Mozart concerti, and it was just so full of life and like, it just made you want to dance almost when she played. And I've heard that. I've played the concerto myself. I've played both of those, and just the sort of clarity without being ascetic, without being sterile. It still had so much life to every note. I love that in her playing. So I'd really recommend that. Recommend her. So we're getting younger here. Vitaly Pisarenko, wonderful pianist. He won the Liszt competition, and he got third in Leeds. Great, obviously great technique. He can play really anything, and just really just warm playing, and beautiful playing. I think what I'm going for in a lot of these players and a lot of these pianists is something interesting that they're saying artistically, not just do they play all the notes correctly, musically even, but are they saying something interesting with the piece that maybe I haven't heard before, or maybe something that will convince me that, oh, that's how it should go, not the way I've been thinking about it for 30 years. Yeah,
that's a hard, that's the part of playing that makes it really, I mean, and I hate to say anybody, because there are certain pieces that I'll never be able to play, and I think for everybody there's a certain piece that or pieces that just it's not going to happen. But for most pieces on the piano, people can learn the notes. But that's not art. That's just it's making it your own and saying something new and fresh.
Yeah, and it's still hard, by the way. You're saying you might not feel comfortable with some pieces. I think most people would be in that boat, even pianists. I mean, I don't know if people understand how hard it is to play some of these pieces, or most of the pieces that you hear at a concert level by these pianists, and you just think, oh, wow, they make it look sort of easy. The amount of dedication and hard work just to get it to that level.
The amount of work to make something look easy is... it's
amazing.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. There's so here's another pianist. Now we're getting, so he was born in 88. This fellow Sean Chen, and actually I've gotten to talk with him. He gave a master class to some of our students through API, Arizona Piano Institute. He was just such a gracious teacher, wonderful human being, extremely perceptive. When you talk and meet these pianists, you realize just how much there is going on in their brain. I always feel that you can't be an amazing concert pianist and artist and not be super smart, because there's so much that you have to think about and process. But the way he could communicate and then home in on something, hear something, and say, "Oh, that's what needs to be worked on in this piece." As just a teacher, he was fantastic. And of course, just demonstrating the pieces that he might have practiced, maybe not, but it was just a phenomenal playing. He won third in the Clyburn, and he got the American prize too, which is every 4 years. But he's a great musician, and he also does some transcription. So he has a transcription of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy, and the whole. I think he has a whole symphony, if I'm correct. But Franz Liszt did transcriptions of all the symphonies as well. And I know we talked with Sean Chen about it. He said he didn't want to be influenced so much by that, because he had his own ideas of how to play certain parts of the orchestra or the chorus in the piano. So a lot of it's a bit different than the Liszt version. But I've heard that, and it's
that would be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, so that he's a great, just ingenious kind of pianist and all around musician. What I like is these people that are not just pianists, but they're creating great music, creating great art.
Yeah.
So here we go. Another one, Yekwon Sunwoo. Yekwon Sunwoo. He is a Korean pianist, and he won the Clyburn. He's the only Korean pianist to win the Clyburn, and he was born in 89. And if you listen to that year, he was just head and shoulders above the competition. Just such amazing command and playing and color and interpretation. Of course, nerves of steel. Which when you're on that kind of platform with that kind of pressure, it's very easy to fall apart. And there have been many great pianists that I have on this list whom I love that did fall apart a little bit, or just couldn't hold it together. And he's just incredible, but also beautiful playing. So he's another one. The next one, he's a friend of mine, so I have a little bit more connection, but he's really risen to fame the last few years. His name is Charles Charamla, and he's from Canada, in fact, from Quebec. And I knew him in Montreal. I was studying in Montreal. He had finished his undergrad studies, I think, when I started my graduate studies there. I'm not sure. I know he's a few years younger than I am. He's about 9 years younger. But then he came back, and he also went to Yale. But he got second prize in the last Chopin competition, and really has shot up since then, performing all over the world. And he's just phenomenal. Again, a very humble person, a very down-to-earth person, a great command, at the keyboard. And if you listen to his concerto, for example, at the Chopin competition, it's such beautiful playing. Actually, his third Chopin sonata, I think he won a prize for that, is an incredible version of that sonata. So I would highly recommend that. Let's see here. Hochen Zhang, born in 1990, and you can see these names in the liner notes. He won Clyburn competition as well. Phenomenal pianist. Here's another one, Claire Huangzi. So I'm going to skip a couple of these names and I'm just going to mention a couple more. Danil Trifonov. Okay.
We'll put the entire list on in the show notes for people to hear.
Yeah. Danil Trifonov I have to bring up because I think he's maybe the greatest pianist of this generation. He is a student of Sergei Babayan's as well. And when I mentioned earlier that Sergei Babayan and Dong Tai-san, those types are really changing the artistry at the piano and producing students that have more sort of all-encompassing musicianship and are producing sound differently at the piano, or at least interpreting things and approaching the way they create sound differently at the piano. And I think Trifonov is really the epitome of that. And I think he's one of the greatest sort of artists and music makers or creators at the piano today. And actually, he's coming to Phoenix. He's coming to Scottsdale in April. We've got tickets to see him.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's phenomenal. And I think he just turned 30. Yeah, I think so. He's either 29 or 30. But, he's already.
We may have to go see him.
Yeah, go see him. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
So he's just phenomenal. There's an American guy whose name I want to bring up, Kenny Broberg, who's certainly keep your eye on him. He just got second in Clyburn, the American prize, third in Tchaikovsky. He's born in 93. Beatrice Rana, she's an Italian pianist. I've met her. She won the Montreal competition, so I got to meet her there. Born in 93. Sungjin Cho, who won the Chopin competition when Charles Richard got second. One of my favorite pianists, born in 94. It's weird because I'm like, 14, 15 years older than these. They're like almost kids, but they're not. They're professional touring pianists, And then I definitely want to bring up Do Hyun Kim, which interestingly hasn't won any big competitions, or I think he won something recently. I can't remember, but he's been in a lot of competitions and never quite got first prize as many of these others that I've mentioned. But I think he's the other really great sort of creator today, and he's young. He was born in 94, so he's a young pianist and really has a huge future. And he was actually here in Arizona for the Bösendorfer. What was that? 3-4 years ago? He was in the Bösendorfer competition, and that's the first time I'd heard him live. And it's so interesting playing. It's not to everybody's liking, I'll say that. A lot of people might think that, you can't play, that composer like that, or why did he make those choices? And he's very polarizing in some ways. But I think enough people are starting to realize just how amazing he is and what he does at the piano that they're willing to accept those slight differences and say, oh, maybe that's a way to play that piece. I'm going to allow myself to be convinced. And I think he's a great enough artist to do that. So he's certainly up there. And then the last person I'll talk about is the youngest one on my list. One more after. He just turned 20, I think, Alexander Malone. Yeah, so Do Hyun, like I said, he's one of the great artists and creators, I think, at the piano. But he's not to everybody's liking, for sure. And I think there are enough people, though, that are starting to come around and see that the things that he's creating might influence them and say, you know what, that's a different way of playing that piece, and I really should consider that. And he's very convincing in it. He actually came to Arizona for the Bösendorfer competition. What was that, 3-4 years ago? and he didn't make it past the first round. It's like I said, not everybody might agree with certain interpretations, and they might say, well, you can't play a certain composer a certain way. But I think he's starting to really develop his voice and become a real force. And I think in the next 5 or 10 years, he's going to become one of the big names performing out there, but one of the most interesting names performing, not just, okay, let's bring somebody in who's going to play it very solidly. And, we can count on him. He's extremely solid, but it's going to be something. And the last person I'll bring up.
Can we hear something new?
Yeah. Can we hear something different and new? And he does that. But like I say, kind of polarizing, because some people might not like that, and they might be used to a certain way of playing a piece and not sort of allow for that new interpretation because it's different or wrong. I don't know. That's a fine line. That's where is it subjective and where is it objective? And so, yeah, but I love his playing. And lastly, I'll talk about the youngest person on my list for a couple of reasons. One is that he hasn't won any big competitions like all the other people I've talked about. He won this competition. I think it's a China International, which is big, but it's not Clyburn, it's not Tchaikovsky, it's not Cleveland, it's not Chopin or Leeds or any of those big ones. But he's already gotten such a big career. It's almost in the same vein or in the same path that Evgeny Kissin did. Evgeny Kissin is a few years older than me. He's I think he was born in 71 or 72. And so, he didn't win a lot of things, but he was already recording Chopin Concerti when he was 13. And he just had a huge career blossom from then. Wow. And he's considered one of the greatest ever. And he's certainly one of my favorites. But this fellow, Alexander Malofiev, who's born in 2001, I don't even know if he's turned 20 yet. He might be just barely 20. He's been performing. You can see tons of stuff on YouTube since the age of, internationally, I'm saying performing. Of course, he started piano when he was probably 4 or 5. But there are YouTube recordings of him when he was 10, 11, I think. And it's already great. He's already an artist, not just a student, not just a kid. And now when you hear him perform, he just has a phenomenal command. He's played with a lot of orchestras, a huge amount of repertoire. And I think he's a real deal. It's he can really do some things, and he didn't have to go through the competition route, which is really refreshing to see because it's just so rare to see that nowadays. I feel because we're in that globalist world that I spoke about earlier, that if you're a great talent somewhere, you're going to be recognized. You're gonna be come through that sieve, and we're going to see you eventually. It's very rare that there's going to be a hidden gem that nobody knows about until they're 90 years old or something, because you can put something on YouTube. And actually, to that extent, because of that medium, there have been a couple people who have made careers on YouTube, and one of them is a formidable pianist, Valentina Lisitsa, who I think at one point, maybe not anymore, but at one point, she was the most viewed classical musician in the world, on YouTube, because she basically self-produced. She has a fantastic recording equipment and this and that. Now, is it fair to say that she just was this unknown person in the basement and then put something on YouTube and everybody learned about it like a Justin Bieber? No, of course, she had already won some smaller competitions. And I don't remember if she's Lithuanian or Russian originally, maybe Russian, but she'd already won some small competitions. She went to a conservatory, studied with some big name teachers. She was a very developed pianist and a phenomenal pianist. She just didn't have the big career because she hadn't won the big competitions yet. So, here comes YouTube, and she starts producing all these recordings of pieces that are quite phenomenal. And she developed a huge career because of it. And a lot of people know her more than some of the names I mentioned. In fact, probably more than most of the names I mentioned. Now, do I think, she's at that level? She's a very fine pianist. She's not my go-to for a lot of things, but I certainly respect what she's done, and I think she can really play her way around the piano. It's pretty phenomenal. So that's one person that's created something from basically a new medium. Another person is Simone Dinnerstein, who basically was, again, studied at the conservatory level with big name teachers, didn't win anything big, but then made a recording of Bach's Goldberg variations, and that was sort of picked up. It was like this newfound thing. It just became huge, and I don't know if Deutsche Grammophon signed her or what happened, but now she's teaching at a major conservatory and has been for a number of years, and has a pretty big career, and really got discovered through, again, this new internet medium. That just wouldn't have happened 50 years ago, or much less 100 years ago. So it's rare that those kinds of breakthroughs happen. They do, but most of the people that are really getting to that top are going through the traditional, you study at the conservatory, you've been with a big teacher, you've gone that route. Maybe you've got to be an exceptional talent, of course, but you're getting recognized by being in a big competition, or being, playing with some big orchestras, and then you just get other gigs with other orchestras. And that's why Alexander Malofiev is so interesting, because he didn't go through that competition route, because he was already great as a teenager. So it's nice to see that happen.
It's going to be interesting over the next 20 years how great artists are found. I think that's going to be a fascinating kind of cultural, study, I think.
I think so. Yeah, especially with all the capabilities we have for recording and just comparing everybody. Like I said, this list is tiny compared to how many great artists. There are really so many great artists out there, and I follow a lot of them, and I watch a lot of them. And some are my classmates, and some are my colleagues, and it's just it's so overwhelming in a way. So what I would say to people: watch some of these people online, see what they do, maybe with one of the pieces that very well, compare different versions. But most importantly, go out to some concerts. Go see some live people. Go to some local concerts and support your local artists, and that always helps everybody, me included, by the way. So, yeah.
Well, hey, Elias, this has been a treat, and I'm excited to introduce, be part of introducing these great artists to our audience, and I hope that people will take this podcast and check out some of the links that are down, and check out, buy some CDs, go see some live shows, go see some live concerts, and enjoy the live environment of a piano concert, because it is pretty unique and it's pretty great.
There's nothing like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. So again, thank you for being on the show.
That was a lot of
We've
fun.
been talking to Dr. Elias Axel Pedersen. You bet. And my name is Mike Levitt, and you've been listening to And If Love Remains.